Okay, so this is chapter 5, Making Money. In chapter 5, we are introduced to the many different ways the homeless make money, and it starts off by looking at the job situation that occurred in the US before the homeless people had to look for jobs. So they look at the um, obsolete manual workers and the labour force of their parents, and their situation for their parents was much better than for them, because with the Silicon Valley boom, a lot of the manual labour force that their parents were involved in was then made obsolete. Then there's quite a few ethnographic examples of particular characters' money-making schemes and jobs that they've had. We look at the differentiation between the white and black characters, and how it was much more easy for the white people to get jobs. And then there's more examples, and it's quite interesting to get involved and look at the examples of where they worked and how they approached work. Then we look at abusive bosses and how, because they were homeless, they were treated quite badly and paid low amounts. Then they look at panhandling, which is they look at it again from the ethnic standpoint, and it seems that the white drug users were much more likely to have signs and try and get money out of people and beg for money, basically. And it also seems that the black characters, they were much less likely to receive money when they were doing that, and then as a result of that felt more inclined to say that they just wouldn't ever do that. And another reason they suggest the black homeless people didn't panhandle was because they were sort of excluded from the job market anyway, and the situation in America meant that they just were, even other black people who were more likely to give money to white homeless people, which was an interesting situation. They do talk about some very interesting examples of the jobs that they had and the way that the people who gave them jobs treated them. So then there is also it looks at crime and how they used crime as a way of making money, and also the implications of that crime had on them for health. For instance, a few of the characters had to clean up toxic waste, and that put them much more at risk of getting cancer and things like that. A few of them went to prison for stealing things from cars. It also looks at some of their past experiences where they, a few of them were like armed robbers and stuff like that, and that's quite interesting. And it looks a lot at the situation in America. So there's an interesting notes that I made here from the book that says, understanding each of the individuals is much more complex than in absolute moral categories. So what it's talking about here is they are not, you can't just frame them as criminals and hard workers. It's a much more complex situation than that. And an example of this they use is Sonny's predicament is framed by a rest. Oh Jesus! Sorry, I'm tired. I've been reading for quite a while. Well, basically, Sonny's predicament is framed by a residual global economy or something like that, Institutionalized racism, shredded welfare safety net, gentrification accompanied by a speculative real estate market, and draconian drug laws. So all of these things have an effect on leading them to going into crime and getting involved with what work they could actually do. And then, as usual, they sum it up very well near the end. They say that, in fact, like people everywhere, buffeted by their moment in history and bounded by their personal okay, I'm just going to sum this up. So basically, what they're saying is it's more complex than just looking at individual agency. They are affected by their time in history. For instance, if it was the Great Depression or there is an economic boom, they're affected a lot by what's around them. And for instance, this thing it says about draconian drug laws means that it made it harder for them to engage in everyday life because they are so shunned from society. And then I'll read this bit that does sum up quite well. They struggled to sustain some sense of agency and moral logic within the chronic crisis enveloping their immediate and social network. So the next one is parenting, and I will try and make a review of that tonight. I wanted to try and read the rest of it tonight, so we'll see how that goes. The next review I may be half asleep, or I may leave it for tomorrow.